Welcome and thank you for joining the ForeFlight webinar. My name is Wolfgang Oestreich and I'm a member of ForeFlight's European Pilot Support Team. Today I will demonstrate how to use ForeFlight for creating EUROCONTROL IFR routes, file and manage flight plans, and then compiling the appropriate approach charts. First, we will highlight which aircraft settings are necessary. Then I show how the route advisor works and can be influenced by setting route constraints and how routes can be edited manually. I will then go into flight plan management to finish the webinar with creating chart binders. All webinars are recorded and can be accessed on the ForeFlight website. For Europe, we will continue in January with a webinar covering aviation weather in Europe and another one covering VFR flying in February. In March, we will highlight the ForeFlight connectivity with avionics. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. You can ask questions via the GoToWebinar message panel on the right. You can click the section which looks like a question mark to expand that section, and you can ask your question that way. We will respond as many of those questions as we can directly during the presentation, and will also respond to many others in the Q&A portion. If your question isn't answered during the session, please send an email to team@foreflight.com. If you have audio problems during this webinar, we recommend joining from a computer. We found mobile devices tend to have more problems with the GoToWebinar platform. This session is recorded and we'll provide a link to access the recording. As previous webinars, they can be found on our website in a video library. Now let's get started. It wasn't too long ago that IFR routes could be created in Europe by looking up to the appropriate airways on a route chart, checking for directions and altitude, and then filing the flight plan with authorities. Due to the complexity of the European airspace, this rarely works today. EUROCONTROL member states have introduced the EUROCONTROL Network Manager, a computer system in which airspace data is centrally managed and flight planning services are provided, but which is also available for air traffic flow and capacity management for airspace usage. The task of a flight plan creation requires balancing against static and short-term dynamic changes in the airspace availability. These data is provided by all member states. In addition, however, slots or dynamic requirements coming from the real-world system will also be incorporated into route generation. These could be high traffic volume, but also weather events. Without the help of complex computer systems which are able to process these data in real time, a valid route generation is hardly possible today. The final changes document alone, which contains short-term changes in the availability of procedures, airways, or airspaces, is published at least once a day and contains hundreds of entries. The ForeFlight Route Advisor is a flight planning tool developed and operated in Europe and fully integrated into the ForeFlight environment. The ForeFlight Route Advisor is also available in both ForeFlight Web and the ForeFlight mobile app. The Route Advisor enables the creation of optimized and EUROCONTROL-valid routes. Regardless of which access is used to create the route, the ForeFlight ecosystem automatically synchronizes flight planning and flight plans in the background. In order to create EUROCONTROL-valid routes, the filing configuration of the aircraft must be first created. This process, which has to be completed once, concerns the existing communication devices and navigation devices, the transponder, and the performance navigation settings for that specific aircraft. For an optimized route creation, it's also necessary to set the performance profile. Once set up, the aircraft data is synchronized via the ForeFlight cloud and is available on all devices. To find out the correct codes for the built-in avionics is worth taking a look at the websites of the respective manufacturers, here for Everdyne and Garmin. For the demonstration in that webinar, I'm using the iPad, but the data is automatically synchronized via the ForeFlight cloud with all other devices or the ForeFlight web as already mentioned. By the way, my preferred planning device for IFR flights is the phone. To set the filing configuration, I select the aircraft in question. In this example is Cirrus SR22. On the right side on the page, go down to the filing section. After tapping the ICAO equipment line, the codes for the navigation and communication equipment can be set up. The ICAO surveillance line is for the transponder details and ADS-B and UAT capabilities if applicable. Finally, the performance-based navigation contains all the settings to operate that aircraft along an ATS route or an instrument approach or in designated airspace. For the flight planning, I first change to the Maps view. During that webinar, a trip is planned with one stop. The first leg leads us from Switzerland to Ostende in Belgium, while the second leg ends in Biggin Hill. The flight planning by itself is done in the Flights tab. From top to bottom. After setting the desired departure time, the takeoff airfield or departure airfield is determined. The list of suggestions below is based on previous plannings. After that, the first destination airfield is entered. Here, Ostende. A tab on the line with the alternate airfield opens the alternate advisor, which in turn creates a list of suggestions based on weather conditions and available runways. Of course, you can also enter a self-selected alternate into the airport code field. Select OSL as an alternate. You can see it will require 8 additional flight minutes and 2 gallons extra fuel. Today we don't talk about takeoff landing performance calculations available for Performance Plus customers or setting the performance profiles for specific flights. We scroll down on the page and you can open the Route Advisor by tapping on the word Routes. The Route Advisor searches for EUROCONTROL-valid routes and optimizes them based on the selected aircraft model and weather conditions. In most cases, the created route is already flyable and can be selected for further flight planning. Sometimes the creation of route requires the setting of specific constraints. We reopen the Route Advisor and tap on the constraints displayed at the top of the screen or the constraints icon. All customers can select a desired elevation band for the route generation, and depending on whether the flight plan is an IFR, Zulu or Yankee plan, the preferred IFR pickup or cancel waypoint can be entered. The Route Advisor will then search for routes that meet these set parameters. Customers with a performance plan can also include or explicitly exclude waypoints from the route planning, and in addition avoid flight information regions. The list shows the overflown flight information regions first, and then you can also select others by searching for them and selecting them. Tapping on constraints returns to the previous window, and after setting the constraints, you can go back to the route generation. After setting the constraints, the Route Advisor will search for suitable routes. In addition, a search in the EUROCONTROL system for further valid routes and for the city is performed. On the right of each route, you can see the resulting flight times and required fuel quantities. Select the route and then transfer it to the planning window. The route string can also be changed manually. You can copy whole routes into it, but also add additional information like stay. In each case, the manually changes are revalidated, and then a note is given if necessary. Performance Plus customers can now enter the number of people on board with the average weight and also perform the fuel calculation. After tapping the Proceed to File button, the filing window opens. Here, customers with a Basic Plus or Pro Plus license can enter the values for persons on board or the required and available fuel. Furthermore, remarks like airport slots, additional alternates, or stay info information can be entered. Before the flight plan is filed, the pilot's details, such as email address and telephone number, must be entered once. After the first successful filing of a flight plan, these details will be saved. Multiple email addresses or phone numbers can be entered separated by commas. After tapping File, a last hint and the option to cancel the process is given. If file is confirmed, the flight plan is entered into the EUROCONTROL system and the successful task is confirmed in the app, but also via email. In addition, two new buttons appear on the bottom of the screen. The Amend button allows you to make changes to the flight plan, time, fuel, persons on board, whatever you want to change. And the Cancel button allows you to terminate the plan. To change the departure time, you just need to adjust the time in the form, then tap on the Amend button, copy the changes, check if the changes are applied, and file the changes. The successful change is signaled by messages in the web as well as by the email again. It doesn't matter from which device the changes are made. Synchronization in the background allows you to file changes or file the flight plan from one device, do the changes from another device and cancel from the third device or from the web. To cancel the plan, tap on cancel and confirm that you won't cancel the plan. Also here the message appears. To add the next flight to the trip, tap on the Add Next Flight icon on the bottom of the screen. And a new flight plan form is created with the previous destination airport as departure airport. For customers with a performance plan, also persons on board and cargo are taken over. Set the new departure time for the second leg. The destination, Biggin Hill here. Let the alternate advisor create the alternate list. Select the alternate. Scroll down on the list. Open the route advisor. Select the route for the second leg. File the flight plan and you are done. For the flight itself, you can save the filed flight plan to the map. Here you can see the map in an IFR style with all the airways switched on, roads and terrain switched off. You can also see altitude changes during that flight in the maps view. The FPL window not only allows you to apply changes to the route, you can also call the procedure advisor to define the procedures for your route. For example, select another departure if necessary, an arrival into the destination, or the approach. Here the ILS runway 21. And after defining the initial approach fix, flow plans and above, can select the minimums based on the aircraft speed category, the equipment status, and the minimum will be shown in a magenta banner on the approach chart. You can add that chart to the map, and you can see here the Jeppesen approach charts overlaid over the en route chart. You can also see the altitudes, speed restrictions and the minimums. To create your chart binder, you tap on Send to and then select Plates. And based on the selected procedures on the map, a binder is created which looks like the previous Jeppesen flight deck. You can see the departure and destination airport and the sections airport, departure, approach, or arrival, approach, and airport information. And you can switch between the charts by tapping on the sections on the left side, but you can also use the 3-finger gesture to scroll through the approach plates. Also, it's possible to select more than one plate. So a lot of functionality is built in so that you can finally execute your IFR flight on a nice way. Now let's start with the Q&A session. A lot of questions are coming in. So somebody missed to add a procedure. So that's quite simple. When having the route on the maps view, you can open the FPL window, select the procedure advisor, and then depending on the available procedures for departure and destination airport, you can select the correct procedure. Other questions are about how to file a flight plan using slots. So today we don't support slot requests, but you can request a slot via the slot coordinator and then plan backwards from the slot time you received from the slot coordinator and put the airport slot into the remarks after tapping on proceed to file. Next question, how to file a training flight plan and put in an X to the ICAO form. So that's simple as well. Also, after proceeding to file, you get that window and you can change the flight type from general aviation into X other and put in training flight, airwork, several approaches or whatever into the remarks section. Some ATCs still prefer their own briefing and flight plan filing websites over. So is it possible over ForeFlight? Yeah, you have two options. So first, let's say that flying IFR and VFR flight plans in Europe is possible with ForeFlight for all European countries. Also, if some are requiring the flight plan via or requesting the flight plan via email, so that works pretty well via ForeFlight. You have also the option to create an ICAO form, print it out or send it via email to the ATC. Plus, keep in mind, in that case, the flight plan will be filed via that agency and is not synchronized within the ForeFlight system, because then in that case, it's outside of the system. So somebody said he has problems filing and flight plan with the no air route space. So the Eurocontrol system has changed a lot in the past years, and free route airspace is available in many countries. That works pretty well in ForeFlight. If you run into issues with creating routes, please send an email to team@foreflight.com, and we are very happy to help you out and fix that issue. Is it possible to activate a flight plan in ForeFlight? So unfortunately, that's not consistent over European countries. So some countries allow flight plan opening and closing via the AFPN network. Many others don't allow that option, and to avoid confusion, we decided not to implement that option for Europe. It's available in the US when flying in the US. At the moment, not available in Europe. Hopefully that will change in future. Can the when changing a flight plan, can the times be changed both forward and backwards? Yes, that is possible. You can delay a flight plan or bring it forward. Both is possible. In case you get a calculated takeoff time message, that message will be received by text message on your phone. Keep in mind that the Eurocontrol system works in that way that bringing a flight backward works always. When bringing a flight forward, the existing plan will be cancelled, and so the takeoff time slot is lost, and a new plan is filed automatically in the Eurocontrol system. And that could happen that you get calculated takeoff time later than for the flight before. So best practices is to file the plan as early as possible and then move backwards if required, but both options are possible. You can delay and bring a flight in front. So there are some requests regarding feature requests, altitude changes in the route. So you can see altitude changes in the route view, on the map view, in waypoints where the altitude is changes. You can see the new altitude. And so that will or it's planned to show that changes also in the profile view. Okay, are restricted areas in the routing considered? Yeah, so I think that question is coming from some issues in Central Europe that the year. So there was one authority who has not put in the permanent active restricted areas into the Eurocontrol system, and so the route generation and as well the validation against Eurocontrol couldn't find any issue. So that is changed on both ways. So one thing is that authority since November is now putting in these airspaces, these permanently closed airspaces into the system. And the second thing is that we are also considering the airspaces in our route planning so that you are no longer run into any issues independent if the data are fed in the correct way or not. How can I file a second alternate? So the second alternate could be put in after proceeding to file. There's the option to put in a second alternate. In that case, you have to adjust the fuel, the required fuel, with the amount of required fuel for that second alternate. So last question. Are the Jeppesen charts required? No, Jeppesen charts are very nice. They are absolutely fine for flying across Europe, especially when you fly to many countries, but it's not required to have Jeppesen charts. Also, if we recommend to use them. With the European regional coverage, all required data and all free available Eurocontrol charts are in the ForeFlight system. You can select them under more and downloads for the countries. You can specify which kind of data you want to download, and you can absolutely fly with Eurocontrol charts. But Jeppesen charts are working better. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining the webinar. As I said, the webinar is recorded. You can register for a free trial under foreflight.com/30day-Europe. You can learn about the new features under foreflight.com/releases. Register for other webinars or listen to existing webinars under foreflight.com/webinars. And in case any of your question is not answered, don't hesitate to contact our support team via team@foreflight.com. Thank you for watching and have a great day.